Al-Jibal is used in the Holy Quran in the sense of great people. And there's many examples of this. Jibal can refer to a very powerful nation. In Surah Taha, those Jibal which we turn into desert and sand particles, they are the great worldly powers. But I don't want to go into the discussion at any detail. Here the word Jibal applies to the people of Jibal. And Jibal people are also referred to as Jinn sometimes. But the Jibal people are more tough and fit for hardy works. So we know that the people who are referred to were chained. According to the Holy Quran, they were chained in iron chains and things and moved in large numbers to their working places. If they were jinns of some sort, they could not have been chained by iron chains. They could not be fettered. So I'm talking of jinn together with Jibal to indicate that the Holy Quran is speaking of metaphors. Jibal can be great powers. And Hazrat Dawood and Hazrat Sulaiman had conquered all the great powers up to the end of Babylon. They had complete command of a country which Israel had never seen before and could not see again after them. So it is the great people of great nations who were subdued by Hazrat Dawood and Hazrat Sulaiman, which are being referred to as Jibal. And Toyur are those spiritually revived people who, prior to the work of God's word upon them, like Jesus Christ made Toyur out of earth, they are those Toyur which are spiritually alive and they can fly heavenly heights. So the Holy Quran goes on speaking in the same symbolic language. And this symbolic language can be understood with reference to their movements from one place to another and their fast-moving winds. If you had given me time, I could explain each word with the help of the dictionary as well as with the help of history, as we find unfold itself during Hazrat Dawood and Hazrat Sulaiman's time. The question arises, why did God use all this terminology? Because this terminology was used in the Bible as well, and which was used in common tales as well. And there was no indication that God meant spiritual things, and they had taken these things physically. So Allah implies the same terminology, but a few keys are put here and there, so that the wise among the people can begin to unfold its meaning and decipher it like other prophets' history and what happened to them. So this is the key to that understanding, and I can give one example of how Allah refers to the same tales but in a meaning, in a way that they have to be understood spiritually. When Allah speaks of Hazrat Sulaiman's end, He speaks of his asa being the sign that he was all right. And that asa, apparently by the people, is understood to have been put in a position where Hazrat Sulaiman is as if leaning on that asa. And the jinn working in the factories, etc., look at that asa and Hazrat Sulaiman leaning on it and think that he is still alive. And this is how the affairs of the government ran. And for a long time, as if each morning the same crowd of jinns passed through the same streets, looking up at the castle, and Hazrat Sulaiman was always leaning on that asa. And these ulama believed that he was a dead man at the same time. He was dead and leaning on the asa. What sort of insult they hurl upon the Prophet of God? The corpse of a prophet is put to lean on a asa so that the jinn should not rebel. How long could that asa work? How long could the corpse of a prophet was so insulted? Because Allah does not permit people to insult their prophets and their bodies. When they die, they are buried. But ulama think this is what it meant. Now, why this asa is being repeated in the Quran? Why, when the jinn realized that this asa was eaten up, they rebelled? This asa here refers to the power symbol of Hazrat Sulaiman, the symbol of his government. As long as the symbol of his government was sound and strong, the rebellious people from the mountains, who were jinns, they could not dare rebel against Hazrat Sulaiman. But when the symbol of this government was moth-eaten or worm-eaten, and people could see it's no longer the same asa, then they started rebellions against the government of Hazrat Sulaiman. So this is why the same asa is repeated in the Quran, but in a manner that it could not be misinterpreted. It was his own son who is responsible for the rebellion of the jinn. When he, after his death, occupied the seat of power, asa became his symbol. And as long as it was his father's inheritance, it created that respect and awe among the people. But when they realized this man is not worthy of anything, he is only occupying a seat of power, which power is gone from under his feet. It was then that the rebellions began, and the King Solomon's entire empire began to crumble down bit by bit and bit by bit. After his son, no empire was left. It was broken into pieces and things. So I'm telling you all this, I'm developing this to indicate that the Holy Quran has a very special style of using certain words which God had already used previously, which were misunderstood, which were turned into tales. The Quran repeats the same story by using those pivotal words, but in a manner, in a situation where they become self-explanatory. So why the Jinn, Toyur, and all these stories about the throne and things, all appear in the Quran because God had used these symbols before, but they were misunderstood. Got it?